It's been 6 months since I bought a Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, and while things like the camera system have been outstanding, I'm going to take you through why I don't think this phone is for everyone, and I'll answer some questions along the way. The first thing I like about the S23 Ultra is the camera system. It is without a doubt the most advanced camera system Samsung has ever put into one of their phones. And it's one of the best camera systems on any phone that I have ever used, which is part of the reason why I brought it on my trip to Hawaii this summer. It's a similar setup to the S22 and S21 Ultra. You have a main camera, ultra-wide, 3x telephoto, and then a 10x optical telephoto. Only this year, the main wide camera now boasts 200 megapixels, which allows for better low-light photos as well as the ability to crop in on a photo without losing a ton of resolution. The main camera overall, in my experience, takes great photos with good detail, sharpness, and color, and overall I've had no real complaints with the photos I've been able to get out of it. The other standout part of this camera system has been the 10x telephoto, which is so much more capable than it was on the S21 Ultra that I had previously. This 10x telephoto gets you better shots and surprisingly excellent video quality. Just look at some of the videos I've been able to get with it. They're stabilized well, have good sharpness, color, and focus. This video is of a Hawaiian Airlines flight taking off from Kona International Airport, being shot from a moving car. This is what a smartphone camera system can do in 2023, and it's pretty amazing. Now, there are scenarios where the 10x won't always perform the way you want. On a close-up of a subject like this gecko in Akaka Falls National Park, I found the videos and photos I got to be not as sharp as I was expecting. And on a recent trip to Tanglewood for John Williams' film night with the Boston Symphony Orchestra, when I tried to snap a photo of the composer himself, I found the S23 Ultra's 10x struggled a bit to capture a clear shot of the composer under the stage lights. Now, compared to other smartphones I've used, like the Pixel 7 Pro and the iPhone 14 Pro, the cameras on the S23 Ultra do hold up quite well. Samsung's system can easily rival Google as well as Apple's, especially because of that 10x optical, which is probably why Apple is rumored to be upgrading the zoom capabilities of their upcoming iPhone. Samsung's color processing has continued to improve. Overall, my skin tones look natural in the photos I've taken with it, and face smoothing wasn't turned on by default. Samsung's color processing, I think, skews a bit warmer like Apple's color processing, while Google will still give you the awesome, cool, contrasty look. Google's color processing is still my personal favorite, but Apple and Samsung also look pretty good too nowadays. It's not as substantial of a difference to me than it once was a few years ago. Though the HDR capabilities of the S23 Ultra system might be the best out of all of them. I found it handles the broad spectrum of colors you get in a sunset really well, like this sunset viewed from Mauna Kea as an example. It just looks a bit more natural compared to the popped highlights from the iPhone 14 Pro's camera system. The next thing I like about this phone is its external design. Samsung's hardware is usually well crafted, and this phone is no exception. The green exclusive color of this year's model is very pretty in person. The sides are a bit flatter than the S21 Ultra, making the phone a bit easier to hold. The only thing I didn't like about the design is the SIM card placement. The hole to eject the SIM card is right next to another nearly identical hole, and sometimes it's a bit confusing which hole you're supposed to put the tool into. Another standout feature of this phone is its performance. It's been extremely snappy with its Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip, and I've never had an issue with the phone's performance in the past 6 months, and it hasn't notably degraded in the time I've been using it either. The battery life is another standout feature. It just sips power with its 5,000 mAh battery, which is rated for up to 26 hours of video playback. For me, when using this as my main phone, I've been seeing the battery at around 45 to 40% at the end of the day, which for my use case is pretty good. And for travel days, I didn't run into any issues with it either. Has the battery life improved over time? Well, given that it was really good to start with, that's kind of hard to say, so overall I'd say no, not that I've noticed. Next up, the S Pen. This is another standout feature of the Ultra line, and it's one I've actually quite enjoyed using over the past 6 months, but not for the reason you may think. The main reason I actually really like using it is it completely changes the way that I actually hold the phone, and I find the way I hold the phone with the S Pen is just more comfortable. Also, sometimes I just don't like using my fingers, and using the S Pen feels a bit more precise and sometimes just honestly a bit more fun. After having a phone now for 6 months that has an S Pen, would I go out and buy another phone just for the S Pen? No, but I totally see why someone would. Especially if you want to take advantage of its note-taking abilities on such a large screen. Samsung has packed so many features into the S Pen, like using it as a remote to take photos, using it as a magnifier, writing on your phone screen when it's off, and converting handwritten notes to text. There's bound to be a feature that you'd find it really useful for. Another thing I've really liked about this phone is its 6.8-inch display. The colors are nice, if a bit saturated, but you can of course turn that down in settings. Like most modern smartphones in this class, the display has an adaptive refresh rate, boasts 1750 nits of peak brightness, so it's good outdoors. But it might not be the display for everybody, and that's because of its pulse width modulation, which one of our subscribers asked about. Pulse width modulation, otherwise known as PWM, is a technology some OLED panels use to dim the display by rapidly turning the display's pixels on and off at a specific frequency. Depending on what frequency is used, this tech can cause eye strain and headaches for some users. This is because your eyes can still perceive the rapid brightness adjustment even if the flashing of the display isn't actually registered in your vision when you look at it. The S23 Ultra's PWM is 240 Hz, and that's a frequency that's low enough where it could definitely cause problems for people who are sensitive to pulse width modulation. And while that's the same as the PWM for the Pixel 7 Pro I have, it's lower than the iPhone 14 Pro's 480 Hz, and the Nothing Phone 2 seems to have a much better rate at 1920 Hz. And these are specs that phone manufacturers don't really make it easy to find, so there may be some inaccuracies with the numbers, and if there are, I'll post corrections in the comments. Alright, so that's everything I've generally liked about this phone. What do I not like about it? One of the biggest downsides I've found with the S23 Ultra is how bulky it feels, which is likely due to the space needed for the S Pen. Now, this isn't like Galaxy Fold level of bulkiness, like that phone is way more chunky than this one. But the S23 Ultra is quite heavy at 234 grams. That is considerably heavier than other phones of this size like the Pixel 7 Pro at 212 grams, or the Nothing Phone 2, which comes in at a great 201.2 grams. And that's probably why I found that phone to feel much better in my hand compared to the S23 Ultra. Another huge downside of this phone, and honestly all Samsung phones, is Bixby. Look, Samsung, I know, you don't want it to be Cortana. I'm sorry to tell you, it's kind of like Cortana. Like, nobody in their right mind is going to choose Bixby over the Google Assistant if given a choice. Which is probably why Samsung makes it hard to remap the Bixby key to trigger the Google Assistant. I had to use a Bixby button remapper application that sort of worked when I started with it, but now has seemed to stop working at some point during my review period, and honestly, it's just ridiculous Google even lets Samsung do this bullshit. Like, it should be in the terms of the Android operating agreement that like Samsung signs that if you let users trigger an assistant using the buttons on the side of the phone, you must present them a choice that allows them to choose the Google Assistant. That's the way it really should work. And related to my frustration with Bixby, let's now talk about One UI, which is Samsung's version of Android. It's fine, okay? It's not great, but not bad. It's been worse in previous years, but when I use this phone, I still just can't shake the feeling like I'm being sold third-party services. For example, in security and privacy under device protection, there's a McAfee ad for one of their products. The phone comes preloaded with Facebook. You also get Microsoft apps preloaded, which is less of an issue, but also at the same time contribute to the feeling that the premium phone you just dropped a ton of money on is filled with a bunch of shit you didn't ask for. The one thing Samsung is absolutely allowed to preload on this phone is a BTS ringtone. And they did just that. Good on you, Samsung. All in all though, One UI does feel very fluid and fast, while at the same time, I don't think it feels as slick or cool as, say, Nothing OS, and I hate Samsung's refusal to give you a proper app drawer like you have with the Pixel OS and Nothing OS versions of Android. Now, the flip side of using a phone with One UI is Samsung has actually done a ton of work over years to build really cool features on top of stock Android. Like all of the features of the S Pen I talked about earlier, Samsung DeX, the way Samsung implements their multitasking, plus extra controls for the camera in their Camera Raw app. There's a lot to like and a ton of functionality that I think many out there will find useful. And yes, you also can install another launcher, especially for the home screen, that does fix some of these annoyances, but while you still retain some of Samsung's great features. So, do I recommend getting a Samsung S23 Ultra? Yes. I'd recommend this phone for anyone who wants the best camera system on a Samsung phone and one of the best smartphone camera systems you can get in general. Plus, it's one of the only smartphones you can get that comes with an S Pen, and after 6 months of using one, I do get the appeal. While at the same time, I do also wish for those who just care about the best camera that they didn't have to get a heavier, more chunky phone to accommodate the S Pen. Now, if you don't care about having the best camera system or having an S Pen, then I'd recommend looking at either the Pixel 7 Pro or Nothing Phone 2, both of which have a similar sized screen but cost much less and have a more stripped down, simple Android experience. And to check the price of the other phones I've mentioned as well as the S23 Ultra and just learn more about them, I've left purchase links in the description below. And consider giving this video a thumbs up if you liked it and found it helpful. That really helps out the channel. And to see more reviews on smartphones and other tech products, you can get to those by clicking the links above. For 6 months later, I'm Josh Tedder. Thanks for watching.